Hey, everybody, it's me, Dr. Cotton, and I'm here to continue our discussion on the Civil War. And today, battles of the Civil War. Now, unfortunately, we can't get into all the crazy details of all the battles in all of the Civil War. We just don't have the time. So today, I'm going to talk about the key points, the key battles, and the key takeaways from these events. Now, as you can see on your screen, you've got the Google Doc here, Civil War battles. You've got a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm going to go over here in a moment, but is also available for you to download and take a look. So let's take a look at the Google Doc real quick. First things first, go ahead, read this short passage here. Remember, if it's blue and underlined, it's a hyperlink. Click on it. Further information, always helpful. Down here you have some essential questions. You don't answer these. These are for you to reflect on. Maybe you go take a walk around the neighborhood, and as you're staring up at the trees and listening to the birds, you think about these essential questions. I don't know, just something to think about. So you'll have 3 assignments within this one Google Doc. The first looks at battle geography, and I'll go over more of that in a second. But you'll notice that most of the battles in the Civil War were in the South, and that's because the South left the North and wanted nothing to do with the North. The North was like, no way, Jose, you're part of us. So the North had to go to the South and fight the battles there because they wanted to get the South back. The South was like, why would we go to the North? We don't want anything to do with the North. So we're not going to fight any battles there. So that's why all the battles are fought in the South, because it was the North who had to go there, defeat the South on their own home turf in order to get it back. Okay. So you answer some questions there. You'll match some battles, events here with their description. So you'll write, for example, Fort Sumter here or here or here, and answer a few questions according to the data here. All right. About 700,000 people died in the Civil War. A lot of people, especially for the 1860s. So, and then finally you do a visual literacy assignment here. You'll look at the picture. Remember, you can zoom in if you need to. Go over here and go from 100 to 125 if you want, and it'll zoom in for you. Click on the hyperlink if you need more information, or use the reading that was at the top of this Google Doc, or use my PowerPoint, or use any of the other links. But some of the questions here have links within them. Remember, click on the link, this will pop up, and boom, you're taken to a new tab in a faraway land where you can read all about the information to answer these visual literacy questions. Cool? Cool. So let's go over the PowerPoint real quick. Now, I can't do the PowerPoint in slideshow mode because last time I did that and I was 90% done with the video, my computer froze. So this is actually the second time I'm going through this. So I'm going to keep it here, not on slideshow presentation mode, but just like this. Hopefully you can still see it okay. You can see my big fat head in the corner, and we can go from there. So battles of the Civil War. Remember, I'm not going to talk a lot about strategy or details or anything. I'm just going to talk about some key points. So the secession of the southern states. On this map here, you can see green states in the north. You can see the yellow states, which were slave states, but decided to stay with the North, aka the Union. We have our orange states that were the first southern states to secede. And then after the first battle of the war, the battle at Fort Sumter, we see these other 4 states, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia, leaving and joining the South. Okay. Remember, California was never a slave state. So even though you can't see it on this map, never a slave state, was a free state, and was a state during the Civil War, even though it was kind of far away. All right. Like I said, and like we've talked about before, most of the, or like I said previously, like I, like we've talked about before, the North was wealthier than the South. They had more money. They had more factories. They did more manufacturing, more roads, more railroads, more infrastructure. This was an advantage that the North could use. They had more weapons because they had more factories to produce more weapons. Okay. Um, they had a stronger political structure, which meant that they could, in terms of logistics, organization, you know, get money, supplies, everything to their troops. The Confederacy, the South, they had good military commanders, but they didn't really have the resources. And even though the battles were fought mostly on their land, it was a defensive war for them. And usually that's a big advantage for the South. It ultimately wasn't enough because they just didn't have the resources or the organizational capabilities, the logistical might that the North had. And that being said, they also had a great desire for victory, but they just they just couldn't they just couldn't go, pound for pound with all the resources that the North had. Okay. So our first battle of the Civil War, again, key point. First battle, Fort Sumter. Not really a battle, but it's an incident, it's an event. And all wars start with one major significant event. And for the Civil War, it was Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Okay. So Southern troops, okay, bombard or attack troops stationed in this Union fort in South Carolina, and thus the Civil War begins. Now, our first major land war is the Battle of Bull Run. This is the big major battle, and it was a battle won by the South. Unfortunately, the South could not. They were like, "Oh, we won the first major battle. Things are looking good for us." No. Okay, they were not. Now, the Battle of Shiloh, which takes place in 1862, I include this particular battle because it's where we see battles with high numbers of casualties start to begin. Okay, and this is where we first see for both sides that the war is going to be a very bloody affair. All right, over 2 days, more than 23,000 soldiers died. It's a lot. But we see here that, okay, if that this sets the precedent that the battles are going to be full of death and a high casualty count on both sides. Antietam, okay, is the bloodiest single day in American history. Again, 23,000 one day. All right, and it's also a point where the Confederate Army started to retreat back further into the South. We have early photographs of the Civil War. So here you have an actual photograph. Okay, and so you can kind of see the scene here of what happened. And you're going, Dr. Cotton, they didn't have cars back then, but they did have carriages. So, that's why you do see that. Okay, there's Abe Lincoln. I did this in the first video where I was like, I moved my video and I was like, hey, Abe, how's it going? Where do you buy your hats? You been to the theater recently? No? I suggest you probably stay away for a while. I wouldn't recommend going to see any plays. Yes. Okay, well, it's good talking to you. And we are back. Okay, so that's me having fun there. What? Too soon? So let's keep going. And this is where my video froze last time. So I don't know what's going to happen next. So let's just try. So we have the Emancipation Proclamation. And this was basically when Lincoln states, I'm freeing all the slaves. Okay. But just because he freed all the slaves doesn't mean that they're, slavery all of a sudden was over and there was equality and everything else. Okay. But it makes slavery more, brings it more to the forefront of the war. Okay. Finally, next we have Gettysburg. Okay. And now I bring up Gettysburg because Gettysburg, I'm sure you've heard of it because of the Gettysburg Address, but Gettysburg is the turning point of the war. So we have the incident Fort Sumter that started the war. We have the first major battle of the war, Battle of Bull Run. We have Shiloh, which really sets the precedent for battles being full of high casualties. We have Antietam, which is the single highest casualty day in history. And now we have Gettysburg, where we're looking at a turning point in the war. So remember, a turning point is really important because it ultimately tells us where that winning side, when we look back on things, the North won. This is when the North is really able to take control and move forward into victory. Okay. So again, here's another photograph for you there. Move this over. Oh, see if I can. It's not letting me do that. Trying to. Nope. I'm gonna try this here so I can move this down. Okay. And so obviously this is where we have the Gettysburg Address. Okay. His famous four score and so this is where Lincoln really shows his leadership. Crazy fun fact is that Lincoln actually had to run for re-election during the Civil War. So imagine you're the president and you had to run for re-election during a war. Okay, but we all know the Gettysburg Address. And it really is a rallying cry of unifying the country and basically saying we're all Americans. We're all in this together. We're fighting for our large, we're fighting for a cause that is bigger than ourselves, bigger than our individual selves. Okay, and that the outcome of this war is going to be, the direction that our country takes. And if the South had won, who knows what who knows what the United States would look like today? But the North won, and so we know what happens. Okay, and no, it's not perfect, right? Our country is not perfect. There's still a lot of problems, but from this moment and from the Northern victory, right, and the country does become more unified. And this is a topic that we've looked at a lot throughout this year, is how the country is at odds with each other. There's lots of things that the different parts of the country don't like about each other. There's lots of differences. While we can celebrate those differences, there are times where we have to be unified in our message and what it is that we stand for and what we believe in. And this was a lot of what Lincoln was trying to talk about in his Gettysburg Address. So that's all. And thank you for dealing with my technical difficulties. I think my second video was better than the first video. Most importantly, because I was able to get it done. Honey, is there anything you'd like to add?
Enjoy your summer. Enjoy your summer.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. My wife says enjoy your summer, but we still have 2 more weeks of school, so I don't know where she's getting that idea. But we'll see you again next week where we wrap everything out. we start to wrap everything up. All right. One final note, there is a school dance for you 8th graders, Friday, June 5th, 5 o'clock. Don't forget, hope to see you there. You should be receiving a flyer, a message from the school, but there is a big virtual dance with prizes for you guys on Friday, June 5th. So hope to see you guys there if I don't see you again here on the YouTube. All right.